What I wanted to talk today about is the work that I've been doing the last several years in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where the work that I'll be presenting is all driven towards our desire to work with the state around building a teacher workforce research agenda. So here is the Old Dominion, the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have 132 divisions. Virginia way means that we can't use the word district, we've got to call them divisions. And we have a little over 2,000 schools. Virginia, like nearly all other states, received money from the federal government to create the Virginia Longitudinal Data System. Their system works a little bit differently than most other states in that there isn't a central warehouse. Instead, there's like this computer brain sitting somewhere down in Richmond. You ask that brain what you want for data. It then reaches out to the different departments, different agencies within the Commonwealth, brings the data together, does the linkages, rehashes all the IDs, and then shares the data with you. What is really nice about the system is that currently they pull from 8 different agencies. So they've got the 3 main education groups, the Department of Ed, the Council on Higher Education, the community college system, but they also have agencies like Children's Services, Social Services, health professions, so the Employment Commission. So you can, with this system, track students from pre-K through college into the workforce. So if you think about all of that data, they've got some amazing data on students. Almost any kind of question you're interested in around students, this system has all of that to pull together for you. The Department of Education also collects a whole bunch of information on teachers. I can know through their data all of the classes that each teacher teaches, not just the tested grades and subject, but all teachers. I know what students are in those classes. I know what grades those students got on that, and then I can connect that to the information on the students. However, irritatingly, none of that data is in the longitudinal data system. So the mission that I've been on the last couple of years is to position myself and the other researchers at UVA as sort of the people who they want to go to help them think through important issues around the teacher workforce and see us as good thought partners and as good research partners. So we started this by forming a relationship with the Governor's Children's Cabinet. The Governor's Children's Cabinet brings together cabinet-level secretaries who oversee different agencies within the state government that operate programs that touch on students' lives. And that cabinet identified school attendance as a topic that they thought they all could have an influence over. And they asked us to look at patterns and trends in chronic absenteeism, which, as you may already know, is defined as missing 10% or more of the school year. So if you've got a 180-day school year, that your kids are missing 18 days. They were interested not just that in the state as a whole, but diving down, connected to one of their initiatives, which was focused on the 3 challenge school divisions. These are the 3 divisions in the state that have the highest number of unaccredited schools. That's Richmond City, Petersburg, and Norfolk. And I pulled out a couple graphs from this report that really resonated with the folks in Richmond. So this graph here is just showing you the trends in the rates of chronic absenteeism over an 11-year period from 2005 to 2015. The gray line here at the bottom is the statewide average, so about 10% of students are missing at least 10% of the school year. But you see for these challenge school divisions, particularly Petersburg, they're up 22% of their students are missing an excessive amount of time of the school year. This here really resonated with the state board. And the state board has changed how they expect districts and schools to track students' attendance, how they are expected to engage with students when they see that they've got a large number of absences starting to stack up. And they've also included chronic absenteeism on the state school quality profiles, which is their state report cards. The second finding from this that really resonated with folks is when we broke down chronic absenteeism by grade level. And you see here that down the pre-kindergartners, for pre-kindergartners not attending school, maybe they're sick, but maybe their parent has a larger role in influencing school attendance for very young kids than you have for high school kids. State's spending quite a bit of money on these pre-kindergarten programs, and in the state as a whole, about 18% of pre-kindergartners are missing an excessive number of days of the year. There are some colleagues of ours at University of Virginia who work with the state around their pre-kindergarten initiative are working and developing a line of work around this. So this, this was a topic that they were interested in. It fed right into the agenda items that they were driving their conversations. So after we released that study, the department reached out to us saying, the IES just released the RPP competition. Last year we had a bunch of people contact us. We're trying to be more strategic. This year, we're interested in working with you around a research proposal. And they identified school climate as a topic of interest. As a teacher, researcher, I hear school climate and I'm thinking working conditions from the teachers. They were thinking students and how students perceive their learning environment. We tried to push them towards the focus on teachers, but we got pulled back to school climate, mainly for two reasons. One is it connected to an initiative that the state board had around looking at school climate. But also, more importantly, and that has been a wise decision now that we're into this project, is that the Office of Student Services was a much more willing partner to work with outside researchers than the Office of Teacher Licensure. So the project was funded, and we are in the middle of our first year. It has two main components. One is doing a statewide survey of all students in grades 4 through 12, teachers and staff, and then doing some research around that. The department's main interest was this survey. They really want the data. They run programs that they think they can be informed by this survey, and then they sort of let me craft the research agenda. So again, I'm interested in building this teacher workforce research agenda. So when I'm thinking about that teacher survey, I'm thinking about working conditions. And so I advocated and was able to convince my partners of the value of adding additional working condition measures to this, rather than just simply asking the teachers, how do you think your students are engaged? What sort of expectations do you have for your students? So we've added things around school leadership, relationship with parents, the instructional environment, the physical environment, and staff collegiality. These are things that jump out of the research around the role that working conditions play in teacher labor markets. So here is the basic conceptual framework that's driving the research around the school climate and connecting it to student outcomes. So the surveys that we have drafted measure a healthy school climate on 4 domains. The extent to which there's deep, rich engagement, there's caring, trusting relationships, high expectations, and safety. And we're interested in how that is connected to student outcomes, which we're measuring on state end of grade exams in math and ELA between 4th and 5th grade. But also, we're looking at student progression and mastery in high school math and science pipelines. This is an outcome that I developed in some earlier work that I had done around evaluating the effects of high school reform measures. But again, I'm interested in teachers, so I dropped into this the teacher workforce, which, given the data we're able to easily access, we're looking at teacher retention and the percent of new teachers at the school to answer 2 broad research questions. First is, how does school climate vary across Virginia? So we're looking across schools, across different responding groups and student and teacher subgroups. And then we're interested in, okay, how does those measures, the degree to which a school has a healthy school climate, correlate with these measures of student educational outcomes, and how might that relationship be mediated through the teacher workforce? And this, I think I've just finally got all the data from the state for this, and so we're just starting this component of this study. Now, while we were doing this work, there were some other dimensions going on with some other conversations going on that connect to not just this study, but to my interest in teachers. And so there was a lot of talk about the sense that there was an increasing crisis around teacher shortage. This isn't unique to Virginia. This is a conversation that's bubbled up once again in many states. And so the governor and the Secretary of Education appointed a task force on teacher shortage. They then asked the Department of Education to compile some data around the teacher workforce in Virginia. They then reached out to us to help create these heat maps, which what this is showing you is the number of vacant positions by division that were vacant the first day of October in 2016. And so you see that it ranges from 0 vacancies up to 218 vacancies, which is up here in Fairfax County, which is the largest division within the state. We did, and this is clearly showing you that that if this is how we're going to, if this is one measure of teacher shortages, the number of positions that don't have a warm body to fill, that this means something different across the state. We broke this down by different subjects, different grade levels. This is again showing you the number. We also looked at the percent of teachers, and so while the divisions that have the largest number of empty positions, unsurprisingly, tend to be the largest districts. When you look at it as a percentage, these two regions, these South Side and Northern Neck, which are rural, which those of you who know me, that's an interest of mine, have the largest impact of these teacher shortages. This then led to the governor calling a teacher shortage summit that was held at the University of Virginia. I gave a joint presentation with the state superintendent of public instruction where we walked through the teacher workforce issues, including these heat maps. And that gave me an opportunity to plug another line of work that I've been doing around teachers, again, trying to build up a body of data that we can then do some really interesting analyses on. So I put this slide in these graphs in that presentation. What this is showing you is the distribution of salaries on the salary scale across those 132 divisions for folks with a bachelor's degree and a master's degree between 1 year and 30 years of experience. So you can see, especially as we move out into the more experienced teachers, that there is a gargantuan range across the divisions in the salaries that teachers receive. I've been doing this, creating this salary schedule database with some undergraduate research interns. We've been working with the Virginia Education Association to collect these salary schedules each year. And then this year we'll have 4 years of data, and again in this database that we're creating, we are tracking the BA salaries, the MA salaries, the PhD salaries for individuals with 1 through 30 years of experience. And now that we've got 4 years, we're ready to move away from these sort of cross-sectional analyses to look at how are these salaries changing within divisions over time. How do these salaries connect to the working conditions data that we'll be collecting in the spring of 19? And ultimately, how does all of this feed in with, connect to other teacher workforce outcomes, such as effectiveness measures and retention? So we're getting some wins. We're getting the department to come to us to help them with important research questions and on research questions that are connecting to teachers. So my colleague Jim Wyckoff and I decided this is a great time to really try to push again on developing some teacher-focused research questions that require access to that individual teacher level data, which, because it's not in the VLDS system, means that someone outside of that has to go in, pull the data, do all the linkages, rehash all the IDs before they share it with us. So there's a bar that we have to sort of get over. So we put together this document that just laid out, okay, this is how we think about any kind of question around the teacher workforce. And this is the framework that would guide the work that we would do. We would design collaboratively with you to help the state move towards ensuring that all students have access to effective teachers. So this framework has, four basic. When it thinks about the lifespan of a teacher, we think about 4 basic steps. Career choice. So how is this your first career? Are you thinking about switching careers and becoming a teacher? You move then into preparation. Here you've got, okay, you can do the traditional route, the alternative route. That experience is influenced heavily by 2 state programs, rules and regulations around licensure, as well as program approval. You finish that, you move into becoming a teacher. You've got to do the job search. There's the hiring processes at the local level. You're a teacher. Then we have in-service. We have the development. We have this differential retention, which is what Jason was talking about, where you're counseling out the ineffective teachers, retaining the effective teachers. If that process is working effectively and smoothly, that then generates the effective teacher workforce, which combines with some other factors, drives student educational outcomes. This was incredibly well received. It was probably the best meeting I've had in that they had clearly read the memo, the document that we had put together. They had had conversations, and they came to us with some specific teacher-focused research questions. And these and this is where we are now. We've got sort of 2 buckets of work. One around school and teacher and school leader quality, and the other I'm calling this toward teacher shortage bundle. So around measuring quality, this is again something that the state board is very interested in understanding how best to do this, the pros and cons of incorporating this into accountability or accreditation systems. They've asked us and provided money, which is when you really realize that you've got a good partner. They've asked us to do a review of other states' approaches to this, look at the literature around the pros and cons of different measures, and map that onto the data that they currently have to give them some sort of sense. If you're going to adopt this type of measurement system, these are the additional data points that you need to design systems to collect from the local level up. The second is this teacher shortage bundle, where we are crafting a narrative with our partners at the department that will sort of get over that bar, saying, okay, this is if we give access to these data, we can answer all of these really important questions that connect to a lot of the key priorities that the state has. So there was, I mentioned the teacher shortage task force. There was another task force around increasing the diversity of the teacher workforce. So these 2 projects connect to that. So looking at differential retention rates of minority and non-minority teachers, combining that with some qualitative data where they're sort of interested in what they're calling the black tax. If you're the one black teacher, African American teacher in a school, are you maybe called upon to serve on all sorts of committees to provide the non-white perspective on whatever issue? And understanding from a local level what they may be doing to try to increase the retention of their minority teachers. The second project is looking at the barriers that seem to be preventing minority teachers in particular from successfully transitioning from the provisional license, which is essentially the alternative route certification, to the professional license. So we'll be able to link to data from SHEV and the community colleges systems to see, okay, well, the reason why they are provisionally certified rather than professional is because they don't have certain professional practice classes taken. Are they at least enrolling in those? Trying to see where during that 3-year process, where they have to get all of the requirements to make this transition, where that seems to be falling down, and where it's going well, interact with the local level to sort of see what they think they are doing to help or what they could be doing to help people transition. This is a major pipeline for minority teachers into the workforce in Virginia. The final component here is actually looking at the connections between the 36 or so odd preparation programs in the Commonwealth to job placement. So what are these networks that exist between preparation programs and schools, regions in the state How long are those teachers remaining there? This is something that when the longitudinal system got first proposed in the state, that those prep programs were really eager to see from that, because they, as part of their accreditation, have to provide some of these statistics to receive their accreditation, but they have a very hard time tracking this on their own. So we believe that across these 3 projects, which connect to well-established needs in the state, that we will sort of be able to overcome those remaining hurdles to get access to that wealth of teacher data that sits outside of the longitudinal data system to really inform policies and discussions in the state to achieve that effective workforce for the students. Thank you.